Hello everybody, welcome back. Last week's video on how to practice arpeggios was very well received by all of you, so thank you for that. And it also created a few questions about how we can apply the same simple concept to maybe other topics in music. And so I thought a great video would be how to kind of do the same thing but with scales, with guitar scales. I'll of course link the video to the end of this one if you've missed it, but the idea was very simple. We start from the most basic arpeggio, which was C major, of course, and then we progress through the rest of them by picking the ones that are closest to each other. And I won't go into any more detail, you can watch that video if you like. But we're gonna do the same thing with scales today. And again, we're gonna start with the simplest scale of all, which is C major, and all of you know that C major is only made up of natural notes. Now for this video I'll be using 3 notes per string. It's one of many ways of dividing the neck into major positions and minor and modes, but we won't get into that today. But if you're more comfortable with the cage system, which we talked about before, maybe single strings, whatever method you have, you will be able to do the same thing. As always, you'll find all the tabs here in the video, and if you'd like to download them in a neat PDF, check out my Patreon. Finally, if you'd like a refresher on 3 notes per string, here's a little short I made, and in less than a minute you'll be up to speed. So let's start with our basic position for C major. We're going to start on the 8th fret of the 6th string, and it goes like this. Of course, I'm only playing C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and that's the idea. Now, to find the closest scale to C major, the easiest way to do it is the circle of fifths. But instead of doing what it's almost always done, which is to go through the whole circle, we're going to divide it into 2 directions. We're going to do the first 5 scales clockwise in the circle of fifths, and the last 6 scales, we're going to do them counterclockwise. And the reason is that we're going to always keep to a very manageable number of sharps and flats. We won't have to switch from one to the other. We'll just take it as 2 separate things. Every scale on the clock has 1 more sharp or flat, depending on your direction, than the previous scale, which means that out of 7 notes, 6 notes will be the same. See, if you were, for example, to go, okay, I'll practice C major, then I'll practice D major, then E, then F, right? It's a natural way of looking at it. The C major scale has no sharps and flats, but D major has 2 sharps, and then E major has 4, but then F major has only 1 flat, and then G is back to 1 sharp. You know, it's all over the place. And therefore, it's a much simpler way to follow the circle of fifths, where the difference between the scale we're practicing right now and the one we're going to practice later is only 1 single note. So let's check it out. We're going to start again from C major really quickly. C, D, E, F, G, A, B. We move up 1 step on the circle of fifths, which is G major. Now G major only has 1 sharp, and that note is F. So all I have to do is take C major, and as soon as I run into an F, C, D, E, F, I raise it 1 half step. I keep going until I get to the next F sharp. And there I have my G major scale. Now from G major, which only has 1 sharp, I move up to the next step on the circle of fifths, which is D. As long as I've studied my G major properly, all I have to do is raise 1 more note, which in this case will be C sharp from C natural. So every time I run into a C, such as this one, I bring it up 1 half step, and I play C sharp, D, E, F sharp, G, A, another C sharp here, and I have my D major scale. And we can keep going like this with A major, E major, and B major, and we're going to stop right there. And when we get to B major, we already have 5 sharps. Rather than continuing, we're going to start again from C now and work our way back the circle of fifths. Of course, I will play it all in sequence for you in just a second. But from C again, with no sharps and no flats. Now we're going to look at the first scale down the circle of fifths, which is F major. F major has 1 flat, and that flat is B. So again, all I have to do is go through my scale, and when I run into a B, I lower it a half step and play. and then we go to B flat major, which has one more flat, which is the E flat, and it's the same thing. I don't have to go through it now, but you play exactly the same thing with one changed note. So let me demonstrate how you will go about doing the whole thing at once. I'm going to start clockwise with the sharps, and then I'll do the flats. Later, total 12 keys, 12 major scales. I will demonstrate it starting from this position here, simply because we start on the root of C. It's as good as any other place. You can, of course, start anywhere on the fretboard and still go through the 12 keys. So if I were to compare C major in the beginning with B major with 5 sharps, they are totally different fingerings. But because I work my way up from C to G to D to A, then it's a gradual thing. I can actually take maybe the first 2 or 3 today, then come back again tomorrow, and I can see how one transforms into the other. This, of course, is extremely useful also for the modes, but we won't get into that today. Also, this way of practicing scales is extremely useful because rather than just repeating patterns up and down, you'll actually start visualizing each key of the scale in any given spot on the fretboard. So you're not just going over patterns all over the place, you're actually analyzing the difference between that C major and every other scale. So every scale will become just as important and just as paid attention to as C major, which usually with scales is a problem because people practice in one key and then they just basically copy and paste on the fretboard and you lose track of what you're actually doing. You're just moving your fingers at a certain point, and we don't want that. We want to understand how they work melodically, harmonically, emotionally, each note as opposed to every other note of the scale. If you want to make things harder for yourself, you could, instead of moving by fourths and fifths, which are very close to each other, you might want to do it totally the opposite. You might want to do it in thirds and seconds and sixths, scales that are very different from each other. You could look at all these scales that we said earlier as modes. There are many, many ways to make it more complicated. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please do subscribe, like, comment, maybe share it with your friends. And if you'd like to support the channel and help me make more of these videos, there's all kinds of links below. I look forward to seeing you again very soon. Take care.